Well, guys, I put out another Instagram vote between Assault on Precinct 13 and Shoot 'em Up, and the results are in, and the review you guys want is Shoot 'em Up. This is a big guilty pleasure film for me. I know it's stupid, I know it's dumb, I know it's convoluted in times, but sometimes you just gotta sit down with an hour and a half movie where it's just all gun shootouts. So, again, this is on my list of will I keep it or will I not. I have fond memories of it, but who knows, maybe after this viewing it won't be as good. I'm still probably thinking that it's going to be in that guilty pleasure category, but we'll find out. Also, I do apologize if my voice sounds kind of off. I'm coming down from a cold. It deterred me from recording a couple other reviews earlier, but I decided to suck it up. I'm feeling a little better, so I figured I'd suck it up and try and do this review. So we're going to watch the movie. My dog is going to get in the way. So I'm going to watch the movie and get back to you with my thoughts on it. Okay, so that was a bit more absurd than I remember it being. I remember it having like some silly moments, but I didn't remember that many absurd things. But to get this out of the way as part of the review, the premise of Shoot 'em Up is a loner drifter witnesses a pregnant woman about to be murdered by some thug, and he defends her, and she gives birth, and then these henchmen, these goons, are trying to kill the baby, so he tries to protect the kid, and there's this big conspiracy involving this baby, and yeah, it kind of gets convoluted, and the majority of the movie is just shootouts, gun shootouts, and thus the name Shoot 'em Up. I'm still torn on how I feel about this one, because I like the mindless insanity of the gun shootouts. Like I said earlier, sometimes you just need a fun movie to put on that's just mindless, that's just got some fun action scenes. And this is definitely that. There is some stuff that I'm not exactly a fan of. The sexual content I could have done without. I feel like Monica Bellucci's character could have been written a different way as opposed to the character that she is, or at least her introduction. Like, they don't really bring up any more of that kind of like the nature of her character like shortly after she's introduced. There's like one other scene that kind of does that kind of thing. So yeah, I could have done without that. I feel like that could have been reworked. So yeah, I don't know. I'm still debating on whether or not I'll hold on to this one. But in terms of like just an insane, goofy action movie, I'd recommend this one. If you got a group of friends that like sitting down and watching silly, dumb action movies and making fun of the absurdity and stuff, this is a great party film. This is a great film to just throw on and laugh at, and just kind of like laugh at the absurdity of it all. In terms of filmmaking, some of the gun scenes are actually handled fairly well. I think it's either the third or fourth gun shootout that I suddenly went, this is kind of like a proto-John Wick. And as far as I know, nobody that was involved in John Wick was involved in this, and this came out, I don't know, 5 or 6 years before John Wick did. But I feel like this was kind of that setup for John Wick to kind of show audiences that you can do you can shoot decent gun action, and then John Wick just perfected it. But yeah, some of the editing is a little rough. There's one gun shootout scene at the end that's pretty nauseating to watch. It involves a skydiving gun shootout. Yeah, I said that right. It gets a little too heavy on the editing. There's also a scene towards the end that has a lot of like cross-fading and cross-editing and like layered scenes upon other layered scenes, and it really didn't make any sense. I think they were trying to go for like a dramatic effect or something. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense. In a movie like this, to say that didn't make any sense, is kind of stretching it, but in terms of like filmmaking, it didn't make any sense. But yeah, it's just a mindless kind of throwaway action film. You know, it's not something that's ever going to be truly remembered as one of the greats. It's not going to really. It doesn't hold up very well at the same time, or you know, but it's fun. It's silly. It's campy. It's very campy. The dialogue is atrocious. The puns and one-liners are just awful. There's this random running joke about Clive Owen's character who's always going, you know what I hate? And then he just gives this elaborate explanation as to something that he hates. He hates how people don't use their turn signals when they drive. He hates when, you know, all these things, and there's no real, like, end game to it. It's just this running joke that goes nowhere, which is really weird. But, no, if you enjoy action movies with really groan-worthy dialogue and absurd action scenes, I'd give this one a go, if you haven't already. But, I mean, you know what you're getting from the title alone. It's called Shoot 'Em Up. That's exactly what you get. It's an R-rated bloodbath of shootouts. I think there's, like, 5 or 6 shootouts, which, when I first saw this, impressed the crap out of me. Because before, like, I always wanted to watch a movie with, like, a lot of shootouts. And typically action movies have, like, 1 or 2 really good shootouts. And this one's got, like, half a dozen. So that always made me happy when I was younger when I saw this the first time. But and in terms of like holding on to the DVD, I don't know yet. This one I might actually have to sleep on. Part of me says yeah, because it's a silly campy movies, and every so often you need one of those. But at the same time, I'm looking at it going like, I just watched it. When's the next time I'm gonna watch it? I haven't watched this one in years, and am I gonna watch it again anytime soon? So, anyways, that's my take on Shoot 'Em Up. I do recommend it at least once if you're an action fan. If you need a story or character building, look elsewhere. But, like I said, based on the title, you should know whether or not this is a movie you want to watch or not. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the spoilers of the movie. It's not really spoilers, but like these are just kind of the detailings of specific points in the movie. So if you want to go into this movie as fresh as possible, now would be the time to turn off the video. But if you want to hear a little bit more of my elaborations on things I liked and didn't like, stick around. So right off the bat, when the movie starts up, it shows the New Line Cinema logo, and the film reel gets shot. Like the little holes in the film reel on the side of the logo get shot, which really sets up the tone for the movie. Like the movie itself hasn't even started. It's just the logo, and there's already gunshots going off. It's just sets up the tone perfectly. And the other scene that really sets up the tone is also at the very beginning. The pregnant woman goes into this like warehouse or shack or something. The goon follows her. Clive Owen gets up. He goes in. And the first thing he does is he taps the guy on the shoulder. The guy turns around. He takes a carrot and just shoves it in the guy's mouth and says, "Eat your vegetables." And the guy just falls down. And it's just like, that sets up the movie. Like right there. That sets up the entirety of the movie. This also embodies the one-man army cliche, like Schwarzenegger's Commando and stuff. Like the one guy is taking on like a ton of goons. None of them can make a single shot, but he has every shot executed perfectly, and he's the one that's moving, and it's just so absurd and so random. But you know, again, it's for the fun of it. And of course, because like the whole movie, another running joke is that he's eating carrots because they're good for your eyesight. And so naturally they've got to do there's a scene where he confronts Paul Giamatti's character and he bites into a carrot and he says, "What's up, Doc?" And of course Giamatti replies with, "Oh, aren't you a wascally wabbit?" or something like that. And it's like, you had to go for the cheap Bugs Bunny line. Like, you couldn't get away with that, could you? Like, I have a feeling, though, that was like the last scene that they shot, probably. It was just like, do we do it? Do we go for the cheap joke? Yeah, let's go for the cheap joke. There's this really interesting concept, too. The villains have pistols that have a fingerprint scanner, like a thumbprint scanner. And so the gun will only go off if that person's thumbprint is holding on to it. And it makes for a dilemma at the beginning because Clive Owen goes to use one of the villain's guns and can't because it's got the thumbprint scanner. And it's kind of this, like, almost ingenious technology that you wonder why they haven't tried to implement something like that now. I'm sure there's tons of reasons why that hasn't come out, like why that doesn't exist in real life. There's probably a lot of like science that doesn't add up, but really the only reason for that element to be in the movie is just so there can be a scene where Clive Owen uses some guy's severed hand to try and shoot the gun, and that's it. Because I think they make the reference to the thumbprint scanner, and then he pulls out another gun with the thumbprint scanner. And Paul Giamatti's like, that gun's got the thumbprint scanner. You're not going to be able to use it. And Clive Owen says, oh really? And he pulls a hand out of his pocket, and he kind of like lines it up with the thumbprint and shoots Paul Giamatti, who's wearing a bulletproof vest. And then like the thumbprint scanner just completely dropped for the rest of the movie. That was the only reason for having that element. I also love how, like, not just this movie, but like a lot of one-man army movies, the henchmen all look the same. And this one, it's very blatantly the same. Like, it's almost like they just copied and pasted the same guy and digitally added him in, because they all wear a skull cap and sunglasses and black shirts and black jackets and jeans, and they all have like the same kind of goatee. It's ridiculous how much they look the same. Like, is this a job requirement? Do you have to look like this to work for this to work for these henchmen, or is it just like a strange coincidence that they all happen to look the same? It's bizarre, and like I said, and it happens in a lot of movies where like the faceless henchmen, they all wear sunglasses and leather jackets and they shoot their guns. But this one, it's I can't tell if it's laziness or if it's satirizing the whole thing. And that's actually something that I'm not 100% sure, is if the whole movie is a satire of these kinds of movies, or if it's just trying to like play into that kind of thing. Because towards the end, when the plot really unfolds, the twist is revealed that the baby was being harvested for some senator because he's got a blood disease. So he donated a bunch of sperm, and they had a bunch of women impregnate themselves so that they could give birth to babies that would have his genetic code, so they could provide him bone marrow so he could live longer because of this blood disease. Does that sound convoluted to you? Because it sounds convoluted to me. And especially in a movie called Shoot 'Em Up. But I just feel like they tried to force that plot in and make it a little more serious. But at the same time, it's just this like goofy shootout movie. But they needed some explanation as to why all of this stuff is happening. So they just crammed the most convoluted reason in possible. And that's why I can't tell if this movie's like satirizing those 80s action movies, or if it's not satirizing them, it's just trying to replicate, or what the story is. I'm really not sure what the thought process to this one was. There's also this really elaborate scene, or I don't know if it's elaborate in the movie, but it's like, anyways, I'll just detail the scene, you can figure out what word I'm trying to use. Clive Owen sneaks into the villain's lair. He's a gun manufacturer, and he takes all these guns and he like ties them to boards and puts like string around the handles and around the triggers and around the boards that he got, and it starts out pretty simple. He runs by one, he pulls the string, it shoots the gun, the guys behind him get shot. He runs towards more, he steps on a tripwire, pulls 2 more triggers, 2 more guys get shot. Pretty simple stuff. And I mean, like, you know, he's kind of sneaking around the bad guy's lair and he's setting this stuff up, and on the one hand it's like, really, you're getting away with setting up all these traps? But then it gets completely bananas. He goes commando Home Alone. He's got all these different strings and he's just pulling them, and all these guns are just kind of like sliding out of nowhere on all these 2x4s, and he's just able to like shoot everybody from behind this like chain link fence. It's completely absurd and makes absolutely no sense. And I don't even understand like the mechanics of how that would even work, even if he wasn't in the main layer. Like if he was in his own hideout, I still don't understand how the mechanics of pulling these puppet strings to fire guns works. Like it's crazy. But I mean, where else can you find a poorly green screen scene with Clive Owen skydiving, having a shootout with faceless goons while AC/DC plays in the background? You're not gonna find that anywhere else. So yeah, for every dumb and bad thing that happens in this movie, there's a fun and equally dumb but still fun scene, I guess. I don't know. But I swear, the most absurd thing that happens in this movie Paul Giamatti's death at the end. It starts out pretty absurd. They've tortured Clive Owen. This is where that like layering scene that I talked about earlier, the thing that didn't really make much sense to me. They layer like Clive Owen being tortured over top of his girlfriend running away with the baby to find sanctuary. It made no sense editing wise, but after they've tortured Clive Owen, he's like, they broke all of his fingers, so he can't fire a gun. So what he does is he kind of stumbles away, and he's laying down in front of a fireplace, and Paul Giamatti comes out and says something about, "I'm dead right about what I thought about you," because it goes into Clive Owen's backstory, because he needs a backstory, I guess. And Clive Owen says, "Say that again." He's like, "I am dead." And Clive Owen goes, "Yep, you got that right." And he holds open his hand, and he's got bullets in between each of his fingers, and he holds them in front of the fireplace. And somehow, in the 2 seconds that he holds it over the fireplace, it enables the bullets to be heated up enough that they fire from in between his hands without blowing up his hand, and shoots Paul Giamatti in the chest. And I thought that's how he died. I thought like he died, like he takes the bullets, he falls down. His wife calls him asking for a divorce, and I thought he just died there, but he actually stands up, and there's this really comedic, intense scene where both Clive Owen and Paul Giamatti are trying to raise up their guns. One's been shot, one's got these crippled fingers, so both of them don't have the strength to really lift up a gun. And Clive Owen just gets the drop on him, I guess, and fires the gun and shoots Giamatti in the chest. And it zooms in on the back, like on Giamatti's back, and it shows the bullet hole wound, and you see Clive Owen through it, and then you can see like parts of his rib cage hanging, and like I think it's his heart or his lung, and then Paul Giamatti just drops dead. It's the most absurd thing that happens in the entire movie. So, yeah, that's really all I've got in terms of like the spoilers and stuff. There's really not much to spoil about this movie, and really like, if you're going into a movie called Shoot 'Em Up and you're expecting like a decent plot and like a lot of like things that you don't want spoiled for you, like it's not that kind of movie, like, you know, whatever. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about Shoot 'Em Up. It's fun, it's stupid, and I don't know if I'm gonna keep it or not. I really don't. So yeah. That's really all I got to say about Shoot 'Em Up. So, thanks for watching, and look forward for more reviews coming in the future. And don't forget to subscribe if you yourself are jonesing for film.